Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm super excited to welcome officially the youngest guest we ever had. A great leader who cares from a very early age, someone who is a true inspiration for Generation Z, but not only, for companies, for really the act of care he's provided in helping so many young people and through advice and what he does to find place and work with some of the most successful companies in the world, but also really be a true entrepreneur and creating so much value. Mills, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really happy to have you today. There's so much to ask you and talk about today. And I'm really excited about our conversation. But first, tell us, how are you? And thank you for making the time.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just, I appreciate the introduction there. I'm really humbled for the invite to the podcast, a very prestigious podcast. I know some incredible people have been, part of the roster here, and I'm just incredibly humbled to actually be invited to actually be part of the podcast. And thank you, Marian, because you always make these incredible things happen. And again, I very much appreciate the introduction. But yeah, how's everything been? It's been good, right? I can't believe we're in April already. I was looking at the date 2 days ago, and I think it was someone on my team, and they were like, "Mills, like, it's April now. We've got this meeting," and I paused for a second to think, "We're in April now." It's just crazy. It was just crazy that the first 4 months have gone so quickly. But for us, they've been really good months. They've been really good months. I know last year was very difficult with COVID. But I know a lot of businesses were struggling, and lots of different organizations, people lost their jobs. Unemployment, especially for young people, was at its lowest, which is, not a good thing. But I think, for us, January, February, and March have been pretty good months. Very, very busy. We've got lots of work on our plate, and we're just looking forward to the rest of the year, really.
Mills, you're very modest, but you'd love to hear more about your story, what you do. For those who do not know you, can you share a brief story about your journey, where you come from, what do you do today, what inspired you to your mission? And for those of you who don't know, Mills, he has actually one of the most extraordinary purpose and mission to actually inspire and help 100 million young people to get access to work, which is absolutely tremendous. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about who is Mills, and what inspired you to reach to that mission.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible story, actually. When I think back at it and I look back at my journey and how the last couple of years have actually panned out. So essentially, I was born in Zambia. So I grew up in Zambia, and Zambia, for those I don't know, is in Southern Africa. And I spent the first 11 years of my life in Zambia. And then, I moved over here when I was 11. So I came here, for those of you that are in the UK, when you're 11, you're in year 6. So you're just before high school, you come in. So I came in here, and I remember I couldn't speak English. English isn't my first language. So it was strange because I was so used to speaking my native language. And, I remember coming here, and I walked into the classroom, and the teacher said, "Go to the front of the class, Mills, and introduce yourself." So I went to the front of the class, and I had a very bad, my accent was very, I had a really strong accent. I had a strong accent. And I went to the front of the class and I said, "Hey, my name is Milimo, which is my name." And I remember everybody started laughing, Marian. I remember people started laughing. So,
it's a beautiful name to me, but I guess they haven't heard it before.
Exactly. And I thought, they were laughing with me. I thought they were, we're all laughing together. They accept me, they like me, we're laughing together. But I quickly found out that it was mockery. I quickly found out that they were actually laughing at me, and they were laughing very much at my accent, how I spoke, and that became something that I had to kind of deal with very early on. And then I moved into kind of high school, did my GCSEs, and then did my A levels, and then went to university to study aerospace engineering, where I launched my first business, a kind of drone advertising business, when I was 18, and did that for about a year and a half. That didn't go to plan, as most early businesses, do. And then I had the fortune and I had the favor to actually intern at the likes of Google. I spent some time at JP Morgan, I was at BP, and I had about 5 internships as well in my kind of second year of university. And then after that, I said to myself, I don't want to go into the corporate world. I thought to myself very quickly, the corporate world isn't for me. And then when I came back to university, I launched TapIn, and essentially it was called Student Inspire Network in its early days. But then I launched that because so many young people would ask me, Marian, they'll be like, "Mills, how did you get into Google? How did you get into JP Morgan? You're an aerospace engineering student. How did someone that's doing aerospace get into like a tech company or like an investment bank?" So I would do some training, and I would have interview prep, and I would have small groups. But then I thought to myself, I want to make impact on a much larger scale. I want to help a larger proportion or a larger group of young people actually get into the world of work. Because what that exposed to me was, if these rocket scientists don't know how to get work, and they're supposed to be like, rocket science is not an easy degree. They're supposed to be like the cream of the crop. If they don't know how to get a job, then there's a big problem here. And then essentially I went and actually, I created a Student Inspire Network, and then TapIn. And today we are an organization. There are 4 of us. We're doubling the team in the next 2 or 3 months. But essentially we're on a mission to prepare 100 million young people for the world of work. And we're using things like social media, like Instagram, like TikTok and YouTube, to really get young people more engaged and informed about their careers.
Wow, what a great mission, Miles. And this comes from your experience, and what inspired you to do all this great really initiative and this great service. But why don't you tell us, how did you get it in first place? What was the trigger, at that moment? How did you prepare yourself initially? And, what were really those important steps that, for those who are listening, and of course they can go into TapIn and find out more about what you do and how they can figure it out. But how did you figure this out? Because there's no advice. And I know young people have so much pressure today from Instagram, from social media. They all want to be successful. Of course, they don't know what to do. It's a big problem of not knowing what to do, but at the same time, they're afraid to fail. And they have a lot of pressure from peer groups, parents, and it's not an easy world, which is a result they're not very happy. And that's what I'm very touched by. How can we help them, guide them more, so they can actually find out what they don't like, what they like, discover more, in order to really feel happy and fulfilling life is the ultimate purpose. And you cannot do that unless you know what you like and what you don't like, which is what you realized quickly when you have a few experiences, internships. You said, it's not for me, I want to do something else. But at that very moment, the beginning is always very interesting and intriguing. How did you figure it out initially when there was not much help around?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I feel like as a precursor to answering this question, I think a statement I have to make is you have to be comfortable with failure. Before you can move into doing something that's your lifelong mission, or doing something that's impactful, or doing something that you really enjoy, you have to be comfortable with failure. And I failed loads. I was that kid that would try different businesses and they would fail. I would try at school, I would try and sell things and they wouldn't work. And, I would build things and they wouldn't work. I'll try, like I mentioned, I tried to launch a drone business that didn't work. So I feel like, that your mindset before you move into success, your mindset has to be one, where you're comfortable with failure, because failure always leads to success, because if you fail enough times, you will be successful. And then the second one is understanding that your mindset, especially having a growth mindset, is the precursor to anything that you do. When you have a vision for what you're going to create, it first starts where? It starts in your head. Once you have that vision, you can then start to kind of build from there. So for me, where the idea and the kind of notion of TapIn came in was, like you mentioned, because I had internships and I had that opportunity to intern at different companies, it gave me a real insight, which I feel like most people don't usually have. It gave me that real insight to the real working world. And the way I got those internships was, I didn't know anything about corporate. Nothing. I didn't know anything about Google or like how to get into Google or how to get into JP Morgan. I had no idea how to actually get into them. But I think what I did was I surrounded myself with the right people. I surrounded myself with people that had internships at these big companies, because that's what I wanted to do. I would do a lot of outreach and go for coffees, like a lot of coffees with people on from LinkedIn. So I'd message people on LinkedIn. Like I used to be that guy that was like, "Hi Marian, nice to meet you. And I saw your profile. I really want to have a coffee." And I'd be replying back to you like that. And I think in the early days when you're still quite young and you're trying to figure out your way in life, that tends to be the approach that you take. You take any route possible, to get yourself to that point of success. So I was using LinkedIn a lot. I was messaging people on LinkedIn, trying to jump on coffees. I'd meet people just to understand, how did you do it? How did you get into Google? How did you get into working at these companies? And what's the secret? And then what I didn't realize at the time was what I was doing was building really good relationships with these people. I was building relationships, and I didn't know at the time, but I was actually networking with people by sharing my story and sharing what I wanted to do. Very early on, it became something that was a propellant to me actually getting those internships. And I think also watching videos on YouTube. I know nowadays young people are glued to platforms like YouTube. We spend so much time on YouTube. We spend tons of time on social media, and I'm a visual learner. So I love watching videos. If I'm learning how to unscrew a bolt. I remember one summer I had a car and I completely took the whole car apart. I mean, all the wheels off, all the doors were off. I repainted the car, and I learned all of that from YouTube. And, when it came to like getting all these internships and getting positions and kind of moving across different strata, what I realized was YouTube and videos were a good source of me getting information and knowledge. So I'd spend a lot of time on YouTube, Googling stuff, trying to find videos. And to be honest, there was limited information, but with the information that was there, I was able to kind of prepare myself well for the interviews, and then actually secure some positions at the companies where I interned for those summer internships and placements.
Well, what a great advice, Mills. I remember a great leader who was actually a guest and a great CEO. One of the most successful multi-billion tech companies said exactly that. Prepare, fail. Do try as many things as possible and see whether they work for you. And especially when you're young, don't be afraid to fail. You don't have much of a family, you don't have, let's say, a lot of dependency. It's not like you have many children you cannot provide. It's just yourself. and try many things. See, you might like it. Discover, learn about yourself, find out who you are.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. I feel like, especially when you're young, and like you said, when you don't have much responsibility, there's no children, you don't have too many bills to pay, there's no mortgage to pay, you don't have many running costs or fixed costs. A lot of young people these days, once they graduate, there's always the option of kind of staying at home with your family to make some savings whilst you work, but that's the opportunity to really go out there. That's the opportunity to really test things out, to try things, try that new business, try that new idea, create that e-commerce business, start that influencer agency, produce that content. If you want to be an influencer, produce that content and even become an influencer. But I feel like young people today, we have such an opportunity. We have such an opportunity to shape the world. And I think more importantly, shape our own lives, just by being able to try lots of different things, with no massive cost to it. So if I was to start an e-commerce business and it doesn't work, great, it doesn't work. I'll try the next thing. I might try coding, I might try learning a new language, or I might try starting a business. I feel like when you're young, you're fully right, Marian. When you're young, that's really when, the opportunities do open up, and you're given such an insight into things that you could be doing in your life.
Oh, thank you for sharing this advice. What a great advice, guys. Do not be afraid to fail and try things, as Miles suggests. And also, apart from now having a great advantage to look at TapIn and everything you've provided as a guidance, network. Go and meet people for coffees. It's have as many coffees as possible, and do not be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, exactly. I would that one was a big one, and I stumbled across that one by accident. Really, like I just thought, for me, I was just very inquisitive. I just wanted to kind of find out about people, but I didn't realize that actually, when you message people and you actually care about them, and you ask them for conversations, a lot of people are open. I feel like a lot of young people in particular think that actually, if I message this senior guy that is CEO or MD or executive at this company, they might not reply back to me, or they'll ignore me. Yes, that is an option, but again, failure. If you do fail, you go again, you message them again, or you message somebody else, and you keep going until you find somebody. A lot of my now mentors, some of them I had to message them for 6 months just to have one meeting. I'm there on LinkedIn, messaging them, and I'm just there like, oh, can I get a meeting, or can we meet? Can we have coffee? And for a lot of them, it took me like 6 months. But those are some of the best and longest relationships that I even have with people today, because it's those people that you really put the effort into, the people that you really invest time in building relationships with. Those are the ones that become really worth it. So definitely spend time going out there and sourcing people that you want to be engaging with and associated with.
Awesome. And also get a mentor, by the sounds of it. That's also really a good advice that you're suggesting.
A huge one, a massive one. And for me, crazy story actually. When I first pivoted from university to doing business, I didn't know anything. I came from a purely engineering, aerospace background. All I knew was engineering, so I didn't know anything about business. So I remember meeting somebody who introduced me to one of my mentors, Kunle, and at the time, I was just straight out of uni and I wanted to grow a fast-growing business. And because we consume so much stuff on Instagram, there's so much, this hustle culture. When you're an entrepreneur, you raise X and you build this business. I thought that the way to build a business was, you find an investor and they put in 100 grand in your business and you grow. So I went into, I think, a conversation or a meeting with somebody that I was introduced to, and I said to them, they asked me, Mills, what do you want from me? That was their question. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is the kind of energy I like, right? What do you want from me? So I was like, straight away, I'm looking for £100,000. I want to grow a fast-growing business. Can you give it to me? And the information that I had about this person was that, he had, just sold a couple of businesses, or I think he had built a portfolio of property, and he had some money and some spare cash to invest in businesses. So I thought, great opportunity to find my investor. But I was shocked at his response. He came back to me and he said, Mills, I can't give you £100,000. But what I can give you is mentorship. And 19-year-old, 20-year-old Mills was like, oh no, I'm not looking for I was in my head, I was thinking, I'm not really looking for mentorship right now. It's not really going to help me. There's no point of me having the mentor. I just need the money, because the money is going to help me to grow my business. Wow, how wrong I was. And I think in the space of about 10 or 11 months, or the space of about a year of Kunle mentoring me, we made over £100,000 in revenue. So he taught me the methodologies and the skills and provided me with the resource that I actually needed to then go and make £100,000, rather than handing it over to me and saying, Mills, here's £100,000. What he taught me was the skills, the knowledge, how to build relationships, how to win sales, how to speak to clients, how to, the etiquette that you have when you're speaking to clients, just all the small things that I didn't know coming out of university. And I think having a mentor, I would honestly 110% recommend that to anyone, because there's just so much value for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. What a great, really advice for young people. Do not just look for the money. What is better, somebody to hand you over once 100,000, or to teach you how to make them every year, or even more? I think it is a no-brainer. It's so helpful. We have actually a great question here from Stoyan that you actually had a chance to meet briefly, and he's asking a very important one here. Mills, what do you see as the top 3 advantages of Generation Z at the job markets, and what are their strengths compared to the generations before them?
That's a very good question. And, I feel like lots of older generations are described by many things. Millennials are described as very lazy. Sometimes they're described as, sometimes expectant of things. But I feel like Generation Z is one of those. It's that demographic where we're doing things differently. More and more young people are launching their own businesses. More and more young people are upskilling themselves nowadays. More and more young people are trying unique things. Just the other day, my little sister made an application to a company, for example, and rather than making a typical CV, rather than handing a typical CV, she was applying to the fastest growing PR agency in the country. And what she did was she created a microsite, and instead of calling it Netflix, she called it 7Flix, which was a play on the agency's name. And the whole entire website was all the movies that she's watched, but she arranged them as a sentence, talking about her journey, over the last 5 years, pre-uni, into uni experience, but she arranged it in the form of movies, and then when you click on the movie, you'd have, description, and then she'll be the main character in there. And then you'd have cast, you have her and all the people involved. And then at the bottom, you have all of her examples of the work that she did. So as you're clicking through all the different movies, it creates a sentence, and she managed to bring her experience to life. You see, and that's something that we haven't seen before from Generation Z. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of applying to jobs, of engaging with culture. And I think as we look at how Generation Z are engaging with older generations, that's what a lot of them can bring. A lot of us can bring. It's new ideas. It's the willingness and the flexibility to come into new environments and make a difference. I think it's also the ability to be able to look at problems differently. Because we're described as the TikTok generation. We're called Zoomers, the Zoom generation. We're on our phones all the time. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that we're intrinsic problem solvers. We're out there solving problems intrinsically, and we're given a unique lens at problems. So rather than looking at problems from one particular angle with one particular solution, we're looking at problems very, very differently, and we're actually contributing directly to, I think, how the world is progressing, and if you look at how young people nowadays are looking at the world of work, a lot of them want to start their own businesses. I think during COVID, a large proportion, I think it was like 45% of Generation Z were looking to start their own business, or they started their own business. A lot of them are looking to be their own creators. People want to go into things like influencing. People want to be YouTubers. People want to, be TikTokers. I think it's so unique. It's so different. It's so rich, and they can bring so much of that experience and value directly into organizations and employees as a whole.
This is and also so much energy, to be honest, so much energy, so much creativity. And you're right, problem solving, it's and it's interesting what you just said, moving away from taking things for granted to actually upscaling yourself. And maybe watching all these things and seeing so many videos, I guess you get a lot of knowledge and experience that, especially if it's targeted and relevant, can make a profound difference. Because I don't think many, having the privilege to speak to really some of the most disruptive talent and and really leadership out there, I feel that I do not think companies and really big part of the leadership understand Generation Z very well. What would be your advice to companies, to really businesses that are right now being disrupted? I mean, to be honest, everything is being disrupted. So we are kind of feeling that that's the new normal. And Generation Z is probably very well equipped. They've been disrupted, being adaptable and making a difference. But it's not that easy to attract Generation Z to companies, because a lot of them want to be their own boss, their own company. So, but they can bring so much as well to existing businesses and really leaders. What would be your advice? How could they understand better Generation Z? How could they attract them? What Generation Z is looking for in a business or company or leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, actually, Marian. I feel like in answer to that question, the first thing that organizations need to do is to acknowledge that they don't attract this audience. I feel like for anyone to make any intrinsic change or any difference in any sector or anything that's done, there needs to be an intrinsic realization of the problem, or the challenge. So once that's done, and once you actually realize that you as an employer are not attracting or engaging with Generation Z, the next thing to do is to actually get to know them. Spend time with them, or if it means working with somebody that knows them, or working with an organization that knows them or spends time with them, do that. Really get as much insight and data and information and actually spend time to understand them. There's a massive, massive understanding piece. And I think the reason why there's such a massive disconnect between Generation Z and employers and other generations is because there's a lack of understanding. I think, employers expect Generation Z to act or think or do things in a particular way. And Generation Z are not like that. So one thing I know is that, Generation Z are changing their wants, their habits, and their trends, not weekly or monthly, but daily. There are so many different trends and different ways of thinking that are changing every single day. So something that was relevant last week, this week to a Gen Z audience is not relevant at all. It's completely changed. There's probably something else that is new, a new trend, a new habit or a new way of thinking that's been adopted within that 1 week period. So, once you've acknowledged the problem or acknowledged the challenge, then there's a massive understanding piece, where you're actually going there and beginning to understand the audience. And that could look like collecting some data. It could literally look like, speaking to the audience and saying, what are their habits when it comes to applying to jobs? You know, how do they feel about applying to jobs? You know, what are their wants and needs when it comes to consuming content about your company? You know, where can they find us? Are they finding us on social media? Are they finding us through word of mouth, through referrals? There's a massive piece there on just understanding the audience. And I feel like once you've understood the audience, you're then able to build a strategy on how you can go forward. I'm a huge advocate for data. I'm a huge advocate for actually understanding how things work, or the data that contributes to certain factors. So if you're an organization, you're looking to attract Generation Z, first of all, acknowledge the problem, and then understand them, collect some tangible data, speak to them. There are so many. You have a focus group, collect some data, run a survey, go and speak in communities where Generation Z actually are. There are so many organizations now. There's so many events that you can go to where the majority of people there are Generation Z. So you as an employer, put yourself there. Figure out a way to actually go into these communities, to go into those audiences, and better understand them, so that when you come out, you've got some really good data and you've got some really good understanding of the audience, and then you can build a strategy based upon that. So let's say, for example, you go into one of these communities and it turns out that you found out that young people want you to speak to them on TikTok, or on Instagram. What are you doing? You're going back and you're figuring out, okay, how can we as an organization build something on Instagram, because we've heard that the majority of these young people want us to speak to them on Instagram. Really cool insight, really quick insight. And you can go in and actually produce your strategy. So once you have the acknowledgement, once you have the understanding, and you've spoken to the audience, you're then able to actually go and build a strategy to attract Generation Z.
Love it. Really so important, to be honest. And things are changing so fast that I think it's essential for our employers and companies to recognize that, first of all, find out more about Generation Z, understand them better, and see what is the best channel to communicate with them. It's so critical and important. And that's one thing. But a lot of employers, and I'm speaking from really as an entrepreneur, but also as someone who helps a lot of great leaders. One thing is, of course, the Generation Z as a whole, but often businesses and entrepreneurs look for some of the most or best performing really Generation Z. And how do you attract those that are entrepreneurs themselves? Imagine, how do I attract Miles? What would attract you, to look at a company or really someone who is considering, should I start or continue with my business, or should I join a large corporate where I could actually make a large scale impact, but I'm not sure what I want to do it with in their setting, but what are the things that they look for when making these decisions? What goes through their mind?
Yeah, I think a really good question there as well, because it's something that a lot of companies I know are struggling or are challenged, to really tackle. Because if you look at the sentiment of young people now, the majority of them want to be either entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, and provide change or difference within an organization. The first thing for me is culture. Generation, I've grown up in a very different culture with different wants and different needs. So if you as an employer or an organization can show that the culture that you promote or the culture that you have is super conducive to their growth and is conducive to their development, and they can have all the support that they need, things like well-being are fantastic. Just having things that are there to support them whilst they're working with you, so thinking about the cultural piece, when they come and work for you, are they going to feel part of the team? Are their voices going to be heard? Because like I said, a massive thing for Generation Z is being heard. It's being heard. It's about sharing ideas, sharing insights, and knowing that you are actually going to be heard and your ideas are actually going to be implemented because you're looking at things from a different angle. So culture is a massive thing. So if you can So if you have a culture that is conducive for them to be part of, and it's attractive to them, massive, massive benefit. The other thing as well is diversity. Having diverse teams. Building diverse teams. And I know we've all seen the kind of data around diverse teams, and we've seen the data around the importance of having diverse teams and the value that's brought, by having diverse teams. But I think when you think back at how generations in particular have grown up, generations are probably the most, ethnically diverse audience. We've grown up. I grew up with people from all sorts of backgrounds when I was in school. And I think the generation below me also did the same. So thinking about things like diversity as, a contributor or as a factor, for young people to come in and feel like they can actually be themselves and really express themselves is another thing. And then the last one I would say is actually having challenging work, exciting work that challenges you and that stimulates your mind more than anything, so knowing that every day you're going to work, you're doing very exciting work. It's work that gets you up in the morning. It's work that, you're excited to talk to your friends about, and I think those three factors for me, the culture, the diversity, and the type of work, producing exciting work as well within your organization, sit as the three key pillars and cornerstones to being able to attract and engage the talent.
Love it, Milos. In fact, this is I just to kind of add on to a little bit. They want to be, as you say, part of a team. They want to co-create. They don't just want to be doing some insignificant work. They want to really, be part of exciting. You're right. The culture is so important. And they're gonna be themselves. That's if they don't themselves, and if they don't have a good well-being. They want it all, and there's nothing wrong to want it all. They don't want to compromise with their well-being and their themselves. And we know in long run that's not working. Even for mid-career leaders, and they can speak. Obviously, that's always an advice I give. If you're on a cross motivation, I call it cross motivation, where your heart and mind are not aligned.
Yes.
Get out, because if you don't get out, you will have disease and problems later on in life. So you don't want that. You want to hear. You want to really invite your heart and mind together to align on a coffee and say, hey, what do I need? I just need to take a moment and just figure it out. And because your health is more important, and so you're absolutely right, because that's sustainable. This comes from sustainability. Diversity is so critical. One of the great CEO told me, the more diverse there's a correlation between diversity and success, performance, which, and of course, you got to intellectually stimulate them. They want to, and I think not just from Generation Z, but people naturally. Someone said to me, learning is equal to health. So if you're learning, you feel healthy and life and inspired, and because you're producing work that challenges you, and you do things you never done before. Well, clearly that's something that is important. So I think from early days, what you're telling me, they can take on a lot more responsibilities than what we treat them by the sounds of it.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like sometimes our expectation and what we're able to deliver is underestimated. People think, oh, these kids are young, but I have friends in Silicon Valley who've raised incredible amounts. We're talking millions, and they're, either my age or younger, and they're running, burgeoning, very successful businesses, and some of them are 19. I have friends that are influencers with millions, millions upon millions of followers, and they're building great agencies, they're building great businesses. And I think it's one of the key learnings that I actually got from one of the books. There's a book I read called The Magic of Thinking Big, a really phenomenal book. And one of the things that he was talking about was scarcities or excuses that people have. One of them is age. People see age as an excuse. Oh, I'm too old. Oh, I'm too young to do this. And I think that sentiment, especially with young people, given the fact that so many stories and people we see on Instagram are becoming younger and younger. I think Kylie Jenner was about 19 or 20 when she she became the youngest billionaire by building Kylie Cosmetics, and she was only 19 or 20. And that goes to show that actually age is more just an scarcity. It's just more of a reason for people not to do things. But I think more and more young people, but in particular Generation Z, are capable. We are more than capable of being able to deliver, to build businesses, to step out and be the difference. A lot of my friends are running and looking after huge agencies. They're younger than me. They're like 22, 23. Some of them are working in multi-billion-dollar companies in very, very senior positions at the ages of 20, 21. So there's so much more that we're capable of doing. And I think it's just a case of being given that platform or being given that trust and responsibility from employers or organizations to actually go out there and make that difference.
Love it. That's me, but I also advise others to just, when you look at a young person, don't look at the age. Look at what they have done, what their vision is, what they're passionate about. And don't just look at them for what they are now. Look at them for what they could be, and provide a platform and care and support, because they can do extraordinary things. Just provide a context and guidance that they need. And I thoroughly believe that there's so much value between connecting those generations. And that's really why I was so excited to have you today, because I think there's so much really opportunity to create a better, more caring world by improving that connection and communication between generations. So we can all serve better and inspire more. We talked about businesses and young people, but what about values, Miles? What are the values what gives you power? What gives you strength? How do you find that motivation? What are the things that served you well? Because young people do need that guidance. And I see a lot of people have followers, but they may have a few 100,000 followers, but the values are not aligned. Sometimes they do the wrong thing. They lie. They do things. What are your thoughts on really how to do it right? Not just to compromise yourself, because reputation, I know, is one of the most valuable thing you're going to have in life. So you don't want to compromise that at an earlier age. And young people sometimes don't realize how important this is. So what is your advice on this?
Yeah, I think another just such an important point to really bring up, because and I'll share, I guess, my own kind of personal notions on this particular topic, because for me, what's really kept me grounded and what's kept me really focused from a values perspective is my faith. I'm a Christian and I'm a believing Christian, and I have been for a very long time. But I think for me, just taking my relationship with God really, really seriously over the last couple of years, and just going on a journey with God, has made me really see the world differently. It's made me really realize that, I remember when I was like 19 or 20, I was always like, I want to be a multi-millionaire, and I want to build, a unicorn business, and, I want to do all these crazy things. And it's great to have that ambition. But for me, I think as I grew, I really, really began to understand the importance of my faith, the importance of building that genuine relationship with God. And really growing with him more than anything, and leaning on him for pretty much everything I do, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's family, just understanding that, I'm rooted in my faith. I'm rooted in Jesus. I'm rooted in Him and His ways. So that changed my life. I remember like in the early days of running the business as well. I was very stressed. I was very focused on other things. I was focused on how am I going to get the next client? How am I going to get the next big business? But it's got to the point now where I know that I am not responsible for that. As a Christian, I believe that all ownership for our lives, our businesses, our resources, anything, all ownership belongs to God. So I think for me, when I realized that I'm not an owner, but I'm just a steward, I'm just someone who's looking after or shepherding something that I've been given, it then just it changed everything. I remember I used to spend hours, working like hustle culture, like getting at 5, finish at like 10 p.m. working. I was doing a lot of work, but then, that's me taking on that responsibility. That was me doing that work. That was me taking ownership of that. But once I let go of that, once I said, actually, let me leave this to Jesus, let me have full faith that the Lord is going to look after everything that I'm doing, it really drastically changed my life. It changed everything that I do. When I wake up every day, the first thing I do is I thank God for the day. And, I spend a lot of time with Him. I spend a lot of time getting to know Him and growing with Him, because all of my sustenance, all of the favor that He shows, all of the goodness that comes out of my life is not me. I'm not the author of anything. When people see us do well or grow or sign clients or grow the business or hire, that really isn't me. That's the truth of the matter. Is I'm not doing any of that. I'm leaning on a much greater power. I'm leaning on God to do all the heavy lifting and to do all of the pulling. And I just sit as a vessel that He's working through. I think even holistically, when you look at the work that we're doing in business, it's all rooted in Christian values. It's all rooted to growing the kingdom. It's about speaking about God. And I know it's something that a lot of people don't talk about in business, but it's something that I want to talk about. It's something that I want to be a champion for, because it's something that I know has been beneficial to myself, and it's been beneficial to so many other people. And when you talk about values, you talk about morals, you talk about my ethics, they're all rooted in the Bible. I try and spend as much time as I possibly can knowing God, and learning the principles, learning, the ways that the Word is teaching, and just continuously just growing to know Him more, because I find so much peace. I remember, like, before I was saved, I was worried about so many different things, Marian. I was worried about 1,000,001 things. But when I offloaded all of those to like the Lord, I had so much more time to just actually figure myself out, and I just became a steward, rather than taking ownership of 1,000,001 things. I remember, like, certain times I would get really stressed. I would go home and I would just sleep because there will be too many things on my mind, But when I learned that actually, the Bible speaks about us being stewards, rather than taking ownership of things. God is the full owner. He's created all these things for us. That could be the anointing, that could be graces, that could be the business, it could be your career. All of this are things that God gives directly to us, and we're only called to be steward. A steward is someone that looks after something that somebody else already has ownership of. So I think just knowing that for me has been the most liberating thing of all. It's given me so much peace. It's given me so much solace, and it's allowed me to spend more time getting to know God whilst He looks after every single thing in my life.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Mills. In fact, it was so. I understand where your power comes from and your success now. I knew it, but thank you for really sharing and giving your perspective, because not many young people talk about that. They don't know it first. And what does it mean to grow with God? I mean, a lot of people don't understand. And I guess what you just said, just taking the time, to find out What are those values? What are really we are here for? Because we have a divine. Every one of us has a divine special plan, by God, and if we spend the time to get to know Him first, we'll find out our purpose and our plan, and we know will not be us. Will be a much higher, really strength and power backing us.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more, and I feel like that leans more very much to young people in this day and age. There is so much that's happening around the world. There are so many things that we're exposed to on social media, which are just absolutely ridiculous and insane. Which young people at a very young age are seeing. Artists are creating music videos with like the devil and kind of like glamorizing things like that, and it's just understanding that I think young people are in a position now where they're going to be open to so much more. Like they're going to be open to so many more of these, I guess, indoctrinations from the media to push them away from their faith. And it's something that I think we need to really be, taking seriously and really tackling as young people. And I think as a generation together, as believers and as children of God, it's something that we really have to really be focusing, because young people are the future. What the devil does, if he can't reach you because you're strong in your faith, he'll reach your children. He'll manipulate them through different channels. That could be music, that could be anything. There are so many things now that young people have access to. Like, I didn't have an iPad when I was 10. I didn't, like, my little cousins and my nieces, they're like 4 years old. They've got iPads and they've got access to so many apps and websites and social media. And it's so easy for them to be indoctrinated and for them to be, manipulated by the works of the enemy. But I think as we continue to adapt and grow as young people, and I think as a generation as well, it's really important to recognize that young people need that support, and they need our support more than anybody else's.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And this is I have a couple of more questions because they're very important here. What would be your advice to parents? Because parents are not even aware of what's going on and how quickly things change for young people, even for their children. And you're right, having access to many different things. Young people just need guidance, and they need to really understand, and they need to try things and fail and so forth. But values are so critical, for and sharing obviously your success story and what gives you powers. And thank you for doing that. It's so important. But what do you think we as a parent myself should do in order to help really our children and our generations to come?
Yeah, I think the first thing is being actively involved in your children's lives, being actively involved and listening. I know sometimes the rhetoric tends to be like the parent, is the one that's in charge, and very much so they are the guardians. You're looking after your children, but I think there's an element there of being able to listen, not to listen to respond, but to listen to understand. To be able to speak to young people and to listen to what they're going through, rather than giving them a solution that fits all, or a one size fits all solution. Speak to them and I actually get to like understand what their problems are, understand what they're struggling with, and create an environment that allows you or allows them to be open with you about things. Once you allow or create that environment for them to be open with you, then you learn so much more. Sometimes, as parents, I say as parents as if I've got kids, well, for not for another couple of years, but parents sometimes have the tendency of, I guess, imposing things to young people, and I feel like there's room for that and there's space for that, but I think there's also a piece of, how do I create an environment that is conducive for communication? How do I create an environment with my child or with my children that is where they can feel open to come to me? It's so easy now for young people to be harassed on social media or to be harassed in public or for different things to happen to them. But if you as a parent have created a culture where, you're always condemning your children for that, they're never going to come to you and they'll suffer in silence, But if you create that culture or you create that environment, which fosters growth, number one, but I think which fosters openness and flexibility and allows for opinions to be equally and equitably shared, then that's the most brilliant conditions that you can have. And I think, the second one is touching on your point around values. It's so important to have values. What do you stand for? What does your family stand for? What do you as an individual or a parent, single parent or both parents, what do you stand for? Because when you have those values and you have those morals, they will guide and shape how you raise your children. And very quickly there are certain things that you can, circumnavigate them away from. But I think very quickly, if you've got a set of values, those could be, Christian values. They could be the values that are embedded within your core and your core essence. But I think once you know those, you're then able to kind of guide your children responsibly as they grow.
Oh, thank you. It's so important. So make sure you get your family values clarified and and kind of really communicated well and live them really. That's because children look and teenagers look what you do and not what you say. Well, ideally both, but you want to make sure that your what you say and you believe is kind of reflected in your actions. And that's so important. Miles, any final words for, looking at the future, looking really, when you close your eyes, when you dream, what is your kind of vision for brighter future? What do you dream for? And what kind of world you want to see and live in short, midterm?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think it's something that I've really been kind of pondering on kind of recently a lot, spending time just really thinking about how that looks like. But I think it's a world where young people or the next generation are given an opportunity, are given a voice, and they're led by reason. They're led by young people who care, and it's a society or, a culture or a community that is conducive to accepting ideas, that is very accepting of ideas, that is forward thinking, that is not afraid to challenge the status quo, because a lot of things, happen arbitrary. Everything seems to follow a certain pattern, but it's when people come in and they do things differently, that's when change really happens. So I think for me, it's about an environment that is equitable in that sense, that fosters ideas, that fosters knowledge, that allows for young people, or I think just people in general, to be themselves, to be their true self. And I think the other thing is, an environment that is conducive to growth, spiritual growth, growing with Christ, growing with Jesus, knowing Jesus. And I think for me, that's how I see the mid to long term future. And if more and more people can, grow in their faith, and I guess be more aligned with their purpose and their value, because every single one of us has a purpose. Every single one of us has, we've all been created for a particular purpose. God created us for a particular purpose. No one is just here for the sake of just being here. There is a specific mandate. There's a specific goal and an instruction that each and every one of us has. And I think for me, it's a future that every single person realizes their God-given mandate and purpose.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time and doing so many great things and serving in such a powerful way. It's a blessing really to have you. And Miles, where people can find you, if they want to reach out to you or companies or leaders, and you have so much really value that you've created, and if they need even advice, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, first of all, a real honor. I honor you, Marian. Thank you so much for inviting me again onto your podcast. A real honor and a pleasure to be amongst the other incredible, leaders and CEOs that you've invited. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I honor you, and I thank you for bringing me on here to share a bit of insight and a bit of my story. Where people can find me on Instagram, Mills_10. I'm on Instagram. On there, I share stories and insights and value on there. If you're on LinkedIn, Milimo Banji, spelled Milimo, Banji, Banji on LinkedIn. And I think those tend to be the two platforms I'm using right now. Just Instagram and LinkedIn. And then for socials, in terms of our work and TapIn's work, it's We Are TapIn across all social media. So if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, it's We Are TapIn, and our website is wearetapin.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your amazing work. Keep spreading the goodness and inspiring young people. And above all, God bless you and all of your work and family.
Thank you so much, Marian. God bless you. And thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast.